Night witches. It sounds like the name of a story to be told on Halloween night. Maybe it's a story to tell around the campfire. The night witches struck terror into everybody that heard them. The night witches were real. They really were. During World War II, Germany invaded Russia, and Russia needed an air force. They didn't have much of one at all, and they needed one to defend their country. Throughout Russia, many women during the 1930s learned how to fly airplanes. Flying clubs were very popular. But these women, they weren't allowed to join the Air Force to help defend their country. So they started writing letters to a woman named Maria Roskova. Maria was the equivalent of our American Amelia Earhart. She was in the Air Force in Russia, but she wasn't allowed to fly combat. She was allowed to fly airplanes, but that was it. And all these women through Russia were writing her and saying, what can we do so we can fly and defend our country? Well, Maria Roskova took those letters with her and met with Joseph Stalin, the leader of Russia at the time. She convinced him to let Russia, these women, be part of the Russian Air Force. But he only agreed under one condition, that Maria Roskova would lead this group of women. She agreed. 2,000 women applied. 400 were chosen. And when these women showed up at the Air Force Base for their training, Maria said, I know you all know how to fly, but you need to learn how to combat fly. And you also will learn how to navigate and grounds crew. Everyone is learning all the different aspects. If you don't like it, leave. Well, the women stayed. But these women, they faced a lot of discrimination. The male pilots, they didn't like the idea of women flying combat. When the women reported to get their uniforms, they were issued men's ill-fitting, too baggy of uniforms. When they went to get their shoes, it didn't matter what size shoe they wore. They were issued size 42 men's shoes. Many of the women had to tear up bed sheets and stuff them into the shoes so that they would stay on. They were required to cut their hair to 2 inches in length. But these women chose to stay. And they went through training. They trained hard every day, 12 hours a day. And at the end of their training, they formed the 588th Bomber Division of the Russian Air Force. Then they went to their air base. And they couldn't believe their eyes when they got there and saw the planes. They weren't military-issued planes. They weren't old military-issued planes either. They were 1920 crop dusters that they were to fly. These These crop dusters were made out of plywood and canvas. They couldn't fly very fast or high up to the ground. They had no radar. They had no communication, navigation, radio with other planes or with the ground. Once they took off, it was just them. There would be the pilot in the front and the navigator in the back. These crop dusters weren't meant for carrying bombs. So the bombs were strapped on to the wings with wire. When they would take off for a mission, 3 planes would take off together. They would fly over to where they were meant to drop the bombs. 2 of them would catch the spotlights of the Germans. The 3rd one would come in over to the spot they were to drop the bombs. When they were really close to that spot, the navigator would reach over and touch the pilot's shoulder, letting her know they were near the spot. Then the pilot would cut her engines, glide over it, and release the bombs, or at least hopefully release them. There are stories of pilots climbing out onto the wings to release the bombs. After the bombs were dropped, then hopefully she would be able to restart the airplane's engine, and then the 3 planes would reconvene. Then a different 2 would catch the spotlights of the Germans, and the 3rd would go in and drop her plane bombs. And then they would repeat it one more time till all 3 of the planes had dropped their bombs. Then they would fly back to the air base. In 5 minutes, they would refuel. The grounds crew would refuel them and strap 2 new bombs onto the planes, and they would take off again. They flew between 5 and 18 missions a night. They only flew at night because they were so slow and there was less chance that they would be shot down. They, being a lightweight plane, were able to outmaneuver the bigger planes, but they still were at a disadvantage. Every ounce mattered, and so the pilot and the navigator did not wear a parachute. The grounds crew person that worked on their plane, when they would come in, would have just a short period of time to do all that was necessary. And it wasn't unusual for a grounds crew woman to lift 3 tons of weight during one night shift, each bomb weighing 220 pounds. Why were they called, or what were these women called? They were called the night witches. Why? German soldiers that were targeted said that when the airplane came in and cut its engine, it sounded like a witch flying on her broomstick. And that's how they got the nickname, the Night Witches. These pilots and navigators, they really liked that name, and so it was kept. German soldiers began to think these women had special powers. To be able to fly like that at night, they must have cat's eyes. They must take special drugs to be able to see at night. Nadia Popova, who was one of those night witches, she said, this was utter nonsense. What we had were talented, smart, educated pilots. If a German soldier managed to shoot down one of the night witches, he received the highest honor given to a German soldier. He would receive the Iron Cross. If he was able to shoot one down, he was considered just an amazing man to have shot down a night witch. At the end of the war, many of the night witches received the highest honor given to a Russian soldier. But at the end of the war, during the parades, celebrating the end of it, the night witches were not included. Their planes were too slow. Most of the night witches at the end of the war returned to domestic life. The night witches were real. The night witches terrified those Germans. They kept the German soldiers up all night with the harassment bombing so that they would be too tired to fight well the next day. The night witches struck terror in all those enemy soldiers who heard them. Thank you.